Good morning, everyone, and vanakkam. My wife happens to be from Tamil Nadu, so I'm actually the son-in-law here as well. But on behalf of India Today Group and India Today Magazine, I'm delighted to welcome you to this important conclave that we have deliberately titled as Tamil Nadu First. For India Today Magazine, this is also a first. It is the first such themed conclave that we are hosting, which focuses on setting the agenda for individual states. The idea is to provide a forum to debate key development issues of a particular state and invite the best strategists to exchange their views and to come up with out-of-the-box solutions to speed up the state's progress and provide prosperity and happiness to its citizens, and in this case, the 78 million citizens of Tamil Nadu. We believe that given India's federal structure, only if the states develop and do well can our nation, our great nation as a whole, develop and progress. That is the reason why India Today magazine began as far back as 2003, the State of the States survey. We became the first to map the performance of Indian states and present an annual report card to the nation. In the 19 years since then, India Today's State of the State survey has remained the most respected barometer and the gold standard of how the different states of India are performing across vital development indices. These include the state's economy. It's not rocket science. The main sort of development parameters, whether it's infrastructure, and I think the Darwin Group specializes a lot on that, industry, agriculture, health, education, law and order, and governance. For the past 4 years of our survey, I'm very happy to state that one state has emerged as the best performing big state with a very consistent and credible performance across various parameters. Can you all guess which state it is? Anyone? Yes, it's the great state of Tamil Nadu. Ladies and gentlemen, let's give them a very, very warm round of applause for that achievement. Tamil Nadu's performance is truly outstanding, particularly at a time when you and I know and the world knows that we have all been hit by a devastating pandemic. And yet, Tamil Nadu was one of the few states that did not register negative growth during this period. This speaks volumes about the socio-economic health of the state and its progress. With a gross state domestic product of $290 billion, or 21.6 lakh crore, Tamil Nadu is India's second largest economy. Chief Minister Mr. M.K. Stalin's dream now is to make Tamil Nadu a $1 trillion economy. That's 3 times the size that it is now. We are deeply honored that later this evening, Tamil Nadu's dynamic Chief Minister, Mr. Stalin, would be delivering the keynote address on his vision of how to make Tamil Nadu the leading state of the country. We're also honored this afternoon that Tamil Nadu's finance minister, the Harvard-educated P. Thiagarajan, would be presenting his views on how he could achieve the chief minister's vision of making Tamil Nadu a $1 trillion economy in the shortest possible time. Most analysts, if you ask them, will concur that Tamil Nadu's growth has been very broad-based, which means that it has a twin focus of boosting manufacturing and services while giving priority to a whole host of development and welfare measures. There are several major things that are going in favor of Tamil Nadu, which make it one of the fastest growing states and why it is ranked #1 in India's today's state ranking. I'll just go across just a few of the focus areas and the reasons why it is doing so. Let's start with the industrial sector. Tamil Nadu has always been a front runner. In fact, 17% of all industries in the country are located in the state. Chennai alone, in this throbbing city that we all are assembled here today, accounts for 60% of the country's automotive exports, making it India's largest automotive cluster. Tamil Nadu also accounts for about 70% of India's passenger vehicle exports and 45% of the total exports of auto exports from India. It is now among the top 10 auto manufacturing hubs in the world. In textiles too, and many of you all who are sitting here would be very familiar with that, Tamil Nadu is a leader. Coimbatore, where my brother incidentally lives, and he's also married a Tamilian. We have a sort of, what would one say? Our favorites are them. Coimbatore is the hub of the textile industry in South India, housing around 15% of the textile mills of the country. This, coupled with the fact that the state now houses the largest spinning industry in India that accounts for 40% of the total production. This has helped Tamil Nadu earn the #1 rank in the country in apparel production and #2 in textiles. And most importantly, even as we look at growth, the sector provides employment to 35% of the state's population. That's 1/3 of Tamil Nadu's population is dependent on the textile sector. And if you look at Tirupur, it is the biggest knitting center cluster in the country and contributes to 90% of the country's knitwear exports. That's how important it is. I'll come to a third area, which is also very important for Tamil Nadu and for the country, and that is leather manufacturing. Tamil Nadu's leather production and tanning capacity contributes to 36% of the total leather exports of the country, accounting for 6% of the global leather requirement. And I'm sure they can do much more than that. Apart from that, finally, there are a whole other range of industries that are doing well. I just highlight the pharmaceutical sector that contributes almost to 10% of the country's production. Our opening session of this conclave has a very distinguished panel of experts, including Additional Chief Secretary Mr. Krishnan, to discuss how to further leverage these advantages and diversify into other sectors to make Tamil Nadu the premier industrial hub of the country. Another key sector, and I come from Bangalore, and that is the IT hub of it, but Tamil Nadu can soon compete with it, apart from fintech sector. It has unveiled a fintech policy to transform itself into a leading global destination for multinational corporations to come in by 2025. It has also unveiled an exclusive policy to develop the state as a top destination for data. Many large companies are already in the process of setting up their data centers at Chennai and in surrounding areas. And most importantly, I think, and we all know that, without manpower, without skilled manpower, you cannot run any industry. It's a human resource, and Tamil Nadu has really focused on that in the last few decades, and that is why it is one of the leaders. So for the industry session, and since we have so much of entrepreneurial spirit in the country, we have assembled together top experts of startup companies who actually run them, and we'll discuss how young entrepreneurs in this state can be encouraged to do business, and also outline a strategy of what needs to be done to make Chennai the next Bangalore. Coming to agriculture, which is also very important because it is the largest source of employment and livelihood in the state. This sector has played a major role in reducing rural poverty in the last few decades. And Tamil Nadu is now one of the leading horticulture states thanks to its diversified agroclimatic conditions that is suitable for a wide range of horticultural crops. It also has, and that is the benchmark of any state that can do, it has almost a cluster of 36 agriculture universities that provide top inputs, and including biotechnology support, very, very important as we go forward in agriculture. Tirupur district, which all of us know, is widely known for its cotton knitwear export, has now apparently got another distinction. It is India's largest coconut producing district. I didn't know that. My brother lives in Coimbatore, and I always thought that was the largest district, but now Tirupur has overtaken it. The state also has agro-export zones for flowers, cut flowers, mango, and cashew nuts. It is planning to set up a major agriculture industrial corridor, and particularly, hopefully, the industry deficit Kaveri Delta would also be serviced. Later this afternoon, we have invited Dr. Ramesh Chand, member of Niti Aayog, who is the country's foremost agriculture economist. He will deliver a keynote address on putting Tamil Nadu's Green Revolution 2.0 on the fast track. The reason why Tamil Nadu has made so much progress, as I mentioned, in all of these sectors, is its focus on the human resources sector. It has one of the highest literacy rates in the country at 83%. And it has done exceptionally well in the field of education. It has the highest number of deemed universities in the country and the highest share of technical institutions also. It is home to 37 of the 100 top-ranked colleges in India. So just before lunch, we have put together a distinguished panel of educational experts who will debate on how to make Tamil Nadu the capital of higher education in the country. And another key sector, which is actually, in terms of employment, one of the largest in the country, is tourism. And Tamil Nadu's growth in this is quite phenomenal, but can be a lot more. The state, as we know, and those who all of you all who are seated there, of course, all of us coming from Delhi and other places don't know so much about it, but it has among the most dazzling, beaches, hill resorts. I used to go very often to Ooty and Kodaikanal. In fact, I spent my honeymoon in Kodaikanal. Wildlife preserves, and a host of heritage and religious destinations. According to the 2020 Ministry of Tourism report, the state has received the second highest number of domestic tourists and, most importantly as well, the highest number of international tourists. Now, if you look at the tourism sector as a whole, the total revenue that is generated by the tourism sector in India is about rupees 5 lakh crore annually. And it provides for 38 million employment to 38 million people. Now, if you take Tamil Nadu itself, it provides rupees 1 lakh crore towards that. That's 1/5 of the total, India's total tourism revenue comes from Tamil Nadu, and it provides job opportunities to more than 3.5 million people. So again, later this afternoon after lunch, we have put together a panel to discuss how to make Tamil Nadu the premier tourist destination of the South, and we look forward to their deliberations. Now comes to the flip side, which we all know, and that's why we're here today, and that's why we're assembled here to talk, that despite these numbers, these very impressive numbers, and the progress Tamil Nadu has made, there are several areas of concern that need to be dealt with. The 15th Finance Commission, and you know money is the most important driver of all of these things, has shown that Tamil Nadu's revenue to fiscal deficit ratio is approaching close to 50% in recent years. That implies that most of the borrowings, when you look at that are being used to finance, is really revenue deficit, which means that if you're taking so much borrowings to fund your revenue deficit, which is paying your salaries and everything else, you do not have enough money to do what we call capital expenditure. And that is very critical for the development of the state. So this fact has to be reversed. The second area of concern is that rural indebtedness. Despite the fact that Tamil Nadu has done well in agriculture, it has one of the highest rural indebtedness, meaning farmers owing money. It is now at 61% of the total households in the state, while the Indian average is 41%. So that is something that Tamil Nadu needs to look and see how it can change that, because the majority of the population lives in rural areas, and unless you get them to develop, the state can't move as fast as it should. And I will not go into too much detail, because there are other sessions that will go into it. Just to give you an idea, the transport sector is critical. We all know how important the transport sector is towards infrastructure and development growth and for industry. That needs to be beefed up. There are solutions that need to come up. as well as the power sector. These are two areas, if you don't do well, or you follow in the same path, you are likely to slow up your growth, and that's where Tamil Nadu needs to focus. There is also, while exports, Tamil Nadu has been doing well, there's plenty of untapped potential for exports, and what that sector calls for is both diversification and dispersion. That's very critical for the growth. So, I mean, I've just given you a broad outline of the progress that Tamil Nadu has made, the challenges it faces, and why we are here today, which is putting together Tamil Nadu first by India Today, that will, I think, take this discourse significantly ahead. And to provide ideas, we have a huge panel of excellent thinkers, some of the best in the country, who are, we hope, will provide the ideas and the agenda and give us a blueprint of how to make Tamil Nadu grow even faster than what it is. And this is the purpose why India Today magazine in the last 20 odd years has focused so much on state development, because we believe that if we can provide a collective narrative of how states can do well, it's not rocket science. There are simple things that the states need to do, as you and I, as citizens of each of our states, that if we focus on, we can make that state great by contributing, and we of course prosper in that. And that is the point of this survey, is to see how we can do apples for apples. If we can show if Tamil Nadu can show the way, all the other states can develop as well, just by looking at the Tamil Nadu model and doing this. And one of the big areas that Tamil Nadu has done, and I studied this when I came in 1984, there was a very interesting thing that happened in Tamil Nadu. The birth rate of Tamil Nadu's population began to drop significantly. No one understood why. And one of the schemes, it's so simple, and no one ever thought about it. Every one of you all know, of course, MGR, right? I actually interviewed him in his Rameshwaram Gardens, very long back. He gave us lunch and talked about what he did. But everyone at that time, if you remember, did the midday meal scheme. He was the one that started it at that particular point. And everybody laughed at him and said, why are you spending so much money on that? Apparently, if you study the facts, because children came to school to eat, they began to be healthier. And because pregnant mothers were also brought in, and their children were also, and their babies or expectant babies were given, the mother was given tablets, anemia tablets and others, as well as ensured that there's enough nourishment, their babies survived. And because their babies survived and their children survived, the population of Tamil Nadu dropped. So what began as we called a welfare scheme actually transformed the state, and therefore you see Tamil Nadu's equal Kerala in terms of zero population growth. This is the kind of examples this forum is brought together, so that we can then make India and all our states together, with Tamil Nadu first showing the way to make India a great nation. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for this. Thank you.